Well, something was supposed to happen, and I don't think it did. I had a little extra video for you, but let's see if I can grab it now. Is it a brand? Here we go.
Travel nursing can bring you to places you've never been before. Tell us your story.
Well, there we go. Okay, hi, it's Rita at the Travel Nurse Channel, and I really like that video. I like the joy there, the fun of it. I remember the first time I saw somebody, actually somebody was a friend a long time ago, and saw him in a big, tall, 6'2" or 3" guy in a sidecar. He was hitchhiking around Europe and got a ride in a sidecar. So lots of fun. Yes, I hope you're joining us on the Travel Nurse Channel. Let's see. I hope I can still, I hope if you want to check in and on Facebook and chat while we're having our broadcast, I hope I can still see it. It's, I think so. I hope so. We'll see. You check in and then I'll find out. I'm going to just click over here and see if that doesn't helps with anything. Oh, there we go. Gollum, I see you. Hi, how are you? Thanks, Gollum. So good to see a familiar face, and it helps me know that I'm getting I'm getting through. Gollum is our friend, and he's all the way in Bangladesh. So hi. I thought I'd talk about today. Now, people, you've got my email, I believe. We can go to our website, www.travelnursechannel.com. And Rita, my email is Rita, R-I-T-A, at travelnursechannel.com. And you can call us as well. That's at the bottom. And let me know what you'd like to talk about, what you're thinking about, if you've traveled before, your comments. If you haven't traveled, what concerns you and so forth. But I thought since I talked to my friend who's a nursing professor, she's actually a department head and a nursing professor and a longtime friend, like, oh my goodness, 25 or so years. And so we chatted a little bit yesterday. It was about something else, but she did mention her student nurses, which every semester there's graduate nurses, and it's very, very challenging now with not being on campus and so forth. But that made me think, what are those student nurses or soon to be graduate nurses, what are they thinking? What's in store for them? And what can they expect when they graduate? So we've talked about in the past this terrible ongoing nursing shortage. Actually, a lot of shortages in the healthcare realm. I'm not sure it's affected doctors yet, but it's only a matter of time. There's shortages in the allied areas. There's shortages of nurses and so forth. Sorry, I'm a little distracted. I'll try to focus. Yes, there are other areas with shortages as well. And it's kind of a vicious cycle. So we have a shortage of nurses, and then we have a shortage of nursing educators. And then how do you get into nursing school if there aren't enough educators and so forth? So consider all the possibilities for you if that's the area you want to go into, or maybe you've just graduated from. Do you want to be in the clinical setting? Do you want to be an administrator? Do you want to be an educator? Huge need for nursing educators so that we get more nurses, right? So we complete that cycle. So what I know about new grads is that it's gone down. Okay, so a couple of years back, let's say at the end of the 1990s, before we hit the millennial, before we hit 2000, that those numbers were going down. And so say in 1990, we had 100,000 nurse grads. That's a rough figure. Well, 10 years late, not even 10 years, yeah, 10 years later, 12 years later, that number went down to 77,000 from 100,000. So almost went down by 25%. And then come closer to where we are now in 2020, we are going back up. So great. There were long waiting lists about 10 years ago, and those colleges and universities are making way for healthcare, making way for nurses in particular. And so now we've doubled what we were doing at the end of the 1990s. So now we're up to 200,000 grads each year, this year. And again, rough figure, you know, I'm not the world's expert, okay? And, but that's close, okay? So that's a round figure, and the good news is it's going up. So, well, okay, I've studied, I've gone to college, I've maybe taken out loans, and I'm excited and I'm ready, and I passed my NCLEX. I get to write RN after my name. Possibly I get to write RN BSN after my name. If you came out of a bachelor's program, maybe you're still studying for that bachelor's, maybe you're studying for a master's or more, a doctorate. But time to start working as a nurse. And what happens? You get out there, you schedule your interviews, and we'll talk about that too. We'll talk about interviews as well. And what is, even before you hit your interview, when you're trying to schedule it, maybe you're speaking to someone on the phone that you got a tip from, and that's hiring, and they say, oh, how long have you been practicing? And you say, well, I'm actually a new grad, and you don't get any further. And they say, no, we need you to have experience. So maybe you don't start with that comment, you know, what kind of experience do you have? So let's go back to while you were a student, or maybe before you started your nursing program. What were you doing with your life then? Maybe that's what you want to start. What kind of experience do you have? Well, you might say, you could have worked possibly in a surgery center. You could have possibly worked at doing annual vaccines. You know, maybe you worked as a medical assistant. Maybe you worked in a long-term facility as a CNA or an LVN. So maybe you were a caregiver for a family member. Maybe you were a certified nursing assistant. They have well, you get a certificate, certified nursing assistant, and sometimes you get a certificate that also says certified home health aide. And in the hospitals, a lot of times they're called PCTs, patient care tech. So regardless of what you're being called, you have experience, and you have experience in whatever area or areas that you did that practice. Even though you didn't do it as an RN, when the interviewer or the person scheduling you for an interview says, where has your experience been? You know, you could consider it. Say, well, I've actually had a couple of years, fill in the blank, working as a caregiver in a home health setting. In addition to that, I have the last 2 years or 4 years worked in all areas, in the acute settings, subacute settings, clinical settings, and so forth. So instead of going right to, oh, I'm a new grad, and getting, oh, we need somebody with experience, start with the experience. So that's my recommendation, to at least get to the interview level. And it's okay if you were doing those jobs as an intern. Maybe you were getting paid, maybe you weren't. Either or, it's experience. So you want to, you want to sell that experience. So you give a little bit more, you gain a little bit of hope from whoever it is that is going to be hiring. Okay, so I wanted to make that. Let's see. You are responsible for you. So maybe when you're going through your nursing education, you're probably getting evaluated nonstop. I mean, a good clinical instructor, a good professor is going to be evaluating you along the way. Are you a self-starter? Are you a good critical thinker? Are you studying the instructions as hard as you're instructing, as you're studying the content? Is your first thing to do just raise your hand and ask a question, or is the first thing to do when you get an assignment is to read it 2 or 3 times, beginning to end, in the middle, reviewing, seeing if you've got the message, and carrying out the program or the paper or the clinical that's been assigned to you. You're a college level. You are studying to be in the caring profession. You need to think on your feet, right? So if you're in an accelerated program, that's okay. You probably, there's some prep programs before you get into your nursing program, and whatever is made available to you behooves you to take advantage of that. If there's some, I don't know, some seminars going on, or some online things, or maybe some regional things going on. I remember when my daughter was prior to starting college, and I was friends with this professor of mine, and she had heard about like some prep, what to expect when you go to college, how to help you prepare for this and that. And it was, I don't know, a couple of weeks in the summer. I couldn't interest my daughter in it. I just couldn't. And maybe it was because it was coming from Mom, but she didn't take advantage of it. And she started college, and she switched colleges. She started at a local 2-year college, and then switched to a 4-year college, and graduated cum laude, by the way. My husband likes to say very loudy. She can be loud. Even though she's a shy and reserved personality, she can be loud. Valen says, hi, how to prepare for travel nurse? Yes, let's go over how to prepare for travel nurse. But I just wanted to address this little bit about grad nurses that maybe want to become travel nurses. So let's say this is for the grad nurse and for the travel nurse. Now, travel nurse will usually have 1 or 2 years experience, depending on what the company is looking for, depending on what the client, the hospital, clinic, facility, etc., what they are looking for. Generally in the acute setting, and generally in the critical would be the emergency room, the intensive care unit, possibly the operating room, the recovery room. They'll want those nurses to have 2 years generally. They may take you with 1 year, just you never know. Maybe you have 1.5 years. I would still apply if you're ready to do that assignment and you're really doing very well with your, let me fix that camera. It's always a good idea for me to be centered, I think. Yeah, if you have 18 months or 20 months, you haven't quite hit the 2-year mark where they're looking for 2 years, I would still apply. Yeah, I would. So how to be prepared to be a travel nurse, how to be prepared for your interview. So you want to prepare yourself sort of psychosocially, mentally is important to prepare yourself for. kind of go through your list of what are my strengths? Where do I think I'm weak? What do I need to work on? Those questions may come up in the interview. Let's see. Do something to prepare yourself, or use a tool to prepare yourself to be calm, because a lot of times we're nervous and are distracted. Our mind is in a million places. We really want the job. So whatever it is you do to keep calm, arriving early might be a good thing, right? Taking deep breaths is always a good idea. Now, if your interview is set for 9 o'clock in the morning or 12 noon, do not get there for 9 o'clock at 8 o'clock. Do not get there for noon at 11 o'clock. No. Get there maybe 15 to 20 minutes early, 10 or 15 minutes early. You can sit in your car if you want to do your calming exercises, your deep breathing, whatever it is. Maybe a hot cup of tea is something that relaxes you. That always relaxes me. I love a nice hot cup of tea. Whatever it is you do, maybe a brisk walk. Maybe you need a brisk walk. If you need to be somewhere at 9 o'clock and it's a 30-minute drive away, you want to leave at least 45, 50 minutes ahead of time. You don't know if there's going to be traffic issues, so you want to leave a little bit ahead of time. So maybe you'll have that extra few minutes to just sort of quietly walk around the block, Maybe that relaxes you. Maybe there's some trees, some birds. If it's not, in a particularly urban setting. But whatever it is you can do to calm yourself. Maybe you need to call mom, or your best friend or your boyfriend or your girlfriend. I don't know. Whatever you can do to calm yourself is going to be better. A clear mind is going to help you be more yourself when you're interviewing. You want to be yourself, and you want to communicate efficacy, right? That I am efficient, I am clear-minded, I am capable as a nurse and to be a travel nurse, and it starts here at the interview. So if you get yourself all wound up and super anxious, you may not be able to portray that, who you really are and who you would be while working for them. So think ahead, plan ahead. And you can't do this too much. Prepare. You can probably find online mock interviews. It could be broad. It could not necessarily be about nursing, but for example, an interviewer might say, tell me about a time that you felt overwhelmed and how did you handle it? So you want to take that from, the first time we were hanging blood, the patient leaked out of their IV site. Okay, that's fine. You just have to find another IV site, So you might want to say, I do recall a time when I was overwhelmed, and this is what I did. It was when I was a student, or it was when I was working such and such, and we were preparing to administer blood, and such happened. And in the end, it all turned out pretty well. I just, I always go to the bedside with an IV kit or with certain tools ready, because you have certain tubing to administer a blood transfusion, and you probably bring gauze and alcohol and so forth. Or you might quietly just have, maybe it's a patient that is a big bleeder. Maybe that's why they're getting blood. You may only have one gauze pad or one alcohol swab. And so you might quietly press the bell. And when they call in and say, do you need help? Yes, please send an RN with some 4x4s, some gauze pads, and so you remain calm, you handle the situation, you want your patient to feel okay, you're capable and efficient, and you portray that in your interview. What else? The other thing, well, Gollum is saying, how do you prepare for travel nurse? There's a lot to that. The first thing I always say is you have to know what you want, Gollum. You have to know what you want. So if I'm only interested in working nights because I feel I do my best work at night. I've been on nights for a while. That makes, oh, here's somebody checking in. Should new grads be willing to work for less money or as an LVN at a hospital in order to get experience? That's one possibility. Okay, so that's anonymous asking that. Excuse me. That's one possibility. I wouldn't go there first, okay? New grads should try to get an RN job, okay? And prior to becoming a new grad, they should gain as much experience as they can, either as an LVN, a CNA, some kind of caregiver, for pay or not for pay. They need to gain experience along the way so that by the time they are a new grad, and they've had all their clinicals, they've taken their NCLEX, they now are a card-carrying RN. They want to work as an RN. And I know it has taken a while, particularly in the last several years. Everybody wanted experience. So it was really taking them 6 to 12 months to finally get that RN job. And it may not even be the RN job they desired. They probably wanted to work in pediatrics, or they wanted to work in the ER, and they got a job in med-surg, or they got a job in a long-term facility. Regardless, they're now finally practicing under their license. So I wouldn't, you could certainly say, look, I'm really comfortable. I had the best instructors. I graduated from a certified college. I know my stuff. I've been working as both a CNA and LVN all through school. I've worked with the elderly. I've worked with the young. Whatever your experience is, regardless of whether it's under your RN license or not, and all of your education, all of your clinical experience, all of your practice and studying, you want to applaud yourself with that. Not applaud yourself with that. Maybe that's not the right word. You want to portray to the interviewer that you feel very ready. And if you don't, then maybe you do want to do that. Take a job as an LVN and till you feel that confidence level. But usually by the time your instructors have, you've graduated and taken your NCLEX, they wouldn't have graduated you if they didn't think you had what it took. And you have a lot of knowledge, and it's time to put it into practice. So you could be willing to work for less money. That is one possibility. You could be even willing, I don't like this. It's a practice out there, not just in the healthcare field, but this sort of non-paid internships. It's rude, I think. People need to make a living. So there should be some money involved, some compensation for your time and effort, and particularly full-time. So you could work for less. That is a possibility to get you in the door, but try to work under the license. I mean, after all, you're carrying a license. You're an RN. So, so that would be my best advice is, yes, you could take less money, probably not recommending that you work as an LVN or CNA once you have your RN license, because it's a matter of time that CNA license, that LVN license that you were working under while you were a student, an RN student, is going to expire and you won't be able to renew it. So maybe if it's only, it's going to expire in 3 months and you're already carrying your RN license, you might say to the person interviewing you, here's something to consider. I could start this position as an LVN for the next 3 months till that license expires, and then maybe we could transfer it into an RN position because it looks like you really needed an RN, and I'm willing. But if that would help, you get 90 days to evaluate me, pay me a little less, and then I'm more ready for the RN position. So that would be something to offer. How to prepare for travel. That, I've done episodes on that, and I probably have notes somewhere. But there's a bunch of things you need to do to prepare for travel on a personal level. If you're going to leave your home for 13 weeks, right, which is 90 days, which is a quarter of the year, what are you going to do? If you're not leaving anyone at home to take care of the dogs and opening and closing the windows and collecting the mail and so forth. So those are things to think of on a personal level. If I leave home for a travel assignment, I scratched my nose, so I'm going to wash my hands. Yeah, so you need to prepare on a personal be diligent about your own personal property and caretaking of yourself and your things while you're gone. So maybe you want to do, like a sublet. Maybe that would be, some of your friends from nursing school or something are coming to visit the area, and you say, hey, I've got a place for you to stay for 90 days if that works out for you. Could you feed the cat? Something, work out that. Make sure you take care of your personal matters. Oh, Gollum is asking, can a new nurse be a travel nurse? That's not very likely if you've just graduated. Okay, say you just graduated. What month is it now? October. Say you're due to graduate in December. A lot of graduating classes graduate just before the spring semester. It's unlikely that you could get a travel assignment without a year's experience. But you never know. You never know. So if you're interested in becoming a traveler, and say you're interested in working in a long-term facility, you could call one of the agencies that does travel assignments for long-term facilities. There are several of them. And they generally hire quite a few CNAs and LVNs, but they sometimes have a number of RNs that they bring in as travelers. And those jobs potentially can turn into sort of rent to hire kind of positions where you're being evaluated because they do need to add to their staff. So that's something to consider too. Say you're traveling from Baltimore or something, one of the East Coast states, south to Florida or southwest to Texas. And you take this position and you love geri care and you love long-term and you are interested in advancing your degree and working administratively. So so with that in mind, if that's something you want and you explain that to your recruiter at your travel company and say, I am really, really interested in traveling. I am actually a grad, but I've worked as an LVN in long-term facilities all through nursing school for the last 3 or 4 years. And do you ever have a client in Florida or Texas? Let's say you're traveling to Texas. Do you ever have a client in Texas ask you for nurses that are interested in eventually becoming staff? And so you can have that discussion. They could say yes at this facility, no at that facility, or I can ask, that may or may not have come up in the past. Or there may be a caveat that, well, you have to do at least 6 months or a year as a traveler before you're eligible for hire. So find out. Yes, it's possible that a new grad with some other experience before the RN license potentially could get in that door. But most travel assignments require a minimum of 1 year experience. So that's the story there, Gollum. And I'll repeat myself. You don't have to work. You can do volunteer work with a CNA or an LVN or an RN license. Those are possibilities too. If that's something you can do for a few months or 6 months or a year, if that's something you can do, and that's all you can do to gain experience, go for it. You know, nobody says that students are the richest people in the world. I was a student for a long time, and I thought I'd be poor forever. I never thought I'd ever get out from under. And I was always getting parking tickets because there was such poor parking at the college I went to. I think my mother paid for a lot of those parking tickets, actually. God bless her. So I think you need to recognize yourself as a pretty terrific new grad. Okay, I don't want to offend anybody, but a lot of us have this side to ourselves. That's our badass side. So get in touch with your badass side. Okay, recognize your talents. And you went to nursing school to practice nursing. And now that you've done it all, went through all the heartache, lost a lot of sleep studying and reviewing and you know, making the grade and learning to be corrected all the time. It's very difficult for adults to be corrected. And by the time you hit nursing school, whether you went right from high school to college, or it's your second chosen career and you're 30 or 40 or 60 and decide to become a nurse, come on, get in touch with your badass and you can do it. And if you do get that 1 year in your area of choice, whether it's pediatrics or ER or long-term, geri care, rehab care, whatever kind of nursing is that you goaled for, yes, you can travel too. You can travel too. So it can be done. It's been done before. And I really want to, I always say this, I don't know who's watching or will watch because these are on Facebook Live, but then they're all archived. And it's on YouTube as well. And I believe we are going to be broadcasting on LinkedIn as well. So if you missed this video now, you can catch it later, Facebook, YouTube, and all that. I really, really encourage you to call in. You can call that 800 number and I can schedule to chat with you. We're live Tuesdays and Thursdays Pacific Standard Time from 2 to 3 p.m. But I can speak to you anytime. I have a really flexible schedule, and then we can broadcast it when we are live. So whatever works for you, recruiters, nurses, new grads, employers, doctors, clinics. You know, I mentioned this on Tuesday, so I'll mention it again on Thursday. I heard from a physician, an internal medicine physician, and he is looking for a CNS, a clinical nurse specialist. So clinical nurse specialists are usually advanced practice nurses that are also getting higher education. They may be on their way to their doctorate. They're usually master's level. And so he is looking for a part-time CNS, clinical nurse specialist, and it's to do COVID testing in this town of Bonsall. And so I'm thinking that some of the recruiters out there and the travel nurse companies or the per diem nurse companies should really consider advertising on the Travel Nurse Channel, because those kinds of things come along. You know, this position may go on for the next year, may go on for the next 2 years, may go on indefinitely. But at this point, the doc is thinking, I probably want an agency nurse, you know. He's probably not wanting to expand his staff that, you know, that quickly. And but he has the need for the CNS. And I understand too, in talking to some of my friends, that the clinics, those COVID testing sites, that student nurses are jumping in and doing that. Grad nurses are jumping in and doing that. So, and I actually had to be tested because some of you know I had this. I'm not showing my scar yet. It's getting better though. It's not as swollen. It's a little bit swollen. I cracked this rib. I destroyed the bone in this. Now I have hardware. But I had to be tested before the poor surgeons and the surgical team worked on me. They wanted to make sure I wasn't bringing COVID into the surgery center or the hospital. It was aligned with the hospital. It was a separate building next to the university hospital. And I had COVID testing and I was negative. I've had no symptoms of COVID, but you never know. You know, I have to go out there and get my groceries and go visit my mom at her facility. And so I've been out there in the world. And so I'm thinking recruiters and travel nurse and per diem nurse employers, you need to be here on the Travel Nurse channel and take advantage of some of these unique requests that are coming up. One being the CNS for a COVID clinic. So Gollum is saying, what is the average travel nurse salary by state, their hourly wage, their monthly wage? Oh gosh, you know, Gollum, you have to know this about me. I don't keep numbers in my head. I am just not a numbers person, but I write a ton of things down. And I'm going to go to my little cards because I think I put some of this in front of the camera and it may still be on one of my cards. I'm looking if I have any money figures. Let's see. Do I have money figures here? So, let's see. I'm not seeing any money figures. So, and it really is going to vary as to where you go. The higher paying states would be New York, Texas, California, particularly San Francisco and Los Angeles. The state of Washington pays pretty high. And then I think Oregon and Hawaii. Not Hawaii. I don't know where Hawaii. Oh, Massachusetts. Massachusetts is another high paying state. And some of these states pay high because their cost of living is high. So that's to be considered too. What's an average? So I want to say between 50 and 60 an hour, but that is going to be broken up into a stipend for living, maybe a relocation figure might be in there. And monthly, I'm not sure. It's usually a contract. So it's a contract for 13 weeks is a general thing. If it's one of these crisis pay, that may not be 13 weeks. That may be 2 weeks. That may even be 2 days. You know, it just depends on what the crisis is all about. So I want to say, see if I get a little help from a computer. I want to say about an average, maybe as much as $50 an hour there, that range. Let's see. If we do 50 an hour, 12, 24, times 36 hours a week. That's $1,800 a week times 13 weeks. Yeah, okay, that comes up to $23,400. So that's about right. So a travel assignment is around $20,000, but it's going to be broken up based on your contract. Is there going to be a night shift differential? Is there going to be a completion bonus. Sometimes there's a completion bonus, which can be anywhere from a couple of hundred to 1,000 or more. And that is completing an assignment without any hiccups. You're on time for every shift. There's no sick days. There's no problems with where you're working. Everything works out okie dokie, hokey smoky. Everything works out really perfectly. And there are completion bonuses. So yeah, I'm going to say between 20 and 26,000, broken up into part of it being taxed as a salary and part of it being untaxed as a stipend for room and board and housing and etc. Depends on how you, and did you take benefits, and is any of it going into a 401k, and is any of it going into health insurance and so forth. But I think that's a good round figure to throw out there, is about 20 to 25, maybe even more depending on which state. And the highest paying states right now, it changes. So keep in mind, somebody might be coming up on the rank, but California, New York, Massachusetts, the state of Washington, these are all, and Texas. Texas is using a lot of travel nurses. So they're the higher paying. Good question. And I think people are being paid twice a month or every 2 weeks is fairly typical in the per diem world. And that's as needed. That's not necessarily travel, but it could be a travel-like assignment if it's local. So they call them local travelers, but more often they're per diem. Per diem is has the potential to not only pay weekly, but sometimes, many times, pay daily. And some nurses like that because they are getting paid once a month if they're working possibly for the VA or the military. And this is their little side job, their pocket money, their Christmas fund, their new car fund, whatever, their fund for life. You know, they need extra money for life. So those are nice incentives for some people to get weekly pay or daily pay. But traditionally, I believe the travel pay is every 2 weeks or twice a month, something like that. I hope that answers your question. I have to give you some broad things. When I don't have that research right in front of me, that's where it goes. That's where it goes. I have to give you my best broad information from many years of being a nursing employer and my many years of being a clinical nurse and an administrative nurse. I was an administrative nurse as well. I don't understand how I keep moving everything. I just keep moving and moving. Oh, no, that's worse. Just leave it alone, Rita. Ay, 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 ay. So, gotta wash my hands when I touch my face. So I go back into my household and see babies and see mommies and babies and grandpas. I gotta stay as clean as possible. Okay, folks, so travel nursing is my bag. Nursing is my bag, and Travel Nurse Channel is here. We hope to be a home away from home for those that are traveling. I know somebody checked in one time and they thought this was so boring. I don't know what they thought it was all about, but it's about traveling, and it's about traveling as a healthcare worker, not just nurses, primarily nurses, but all of the allied, the physical therapists, the PTAs, the physical therapy assistants, the OTs, the speech pathologists, the CAT scanner techs and the respiratory techs. Oh, big need for respiratory. As a matter of fact, there's companies, I think, that just use respiratory therapists for travel. There's companies out there. There's more than 300 travel companies in the U.S., and some are very big, some are very specialized, some do it all. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what you know and what your experiences are. I did talk about the travel companies on one of the videos, so if you're going to archive it, I gave you the top, I think the top 5 or top 10, and some of them, one of them was a rather new company. It was, I think, a relation, a son from, was doing his own business. Maybe it was Cross Country, the son of somebody from Cross Country, or maybe it was America Mobile. I'm not sure, but they were doing very, very well. And there are many companies out there. Oh, Gollum has another question. What is the average travel nurse salary? Oh, no, that's, I think we answered that. Yeah, yeah. 50-ish broken up into different monies, right? So salary, there's relocation reimbursement, travel reimbursement if you're taking a car or bus or a train to get to where you need to go. And then there's stipends. Monies that aren't salary are usually non-taxed, which is nice. But you need to keep records so that when you do your income tax, your annual income tax, that you explain these monies. If you're driving, sometimes you might need money for gas and so forth. So those contracts are written to your needs and to what the company, the travel company, is able to provide for you. And you can talk to more than one travel company and say, look, I want to travel to Texas. I'm an ER nurse. I'm flexible. I also work in the ICU, and I prefer days. I don't work nights, or I prefer nights. I don't work days, but I'm flexible, meaning I can work, if I just want to work days, I'm willing to work 5A, 7A, up to noon. I can work as late as midnight, but that's when I have to go to sleep. So we talked about that too. ERs have much different schedules than the rest of the hospital. The rest of the hospital will either be on 8 or 12-hour shifts, more likely 12s, that either start at 6 or 7 in the morning. The next shift would start at 6 or 7 at night. But the ER, they break it up. They have shifts that start at 1 p.m. and 3 p.m. and 12 midnight and so forth. They stagger them for their busier times. And a lot of times midnight can be a bewitching hour because people go to sleep and they don't feel that well, and then they wake up and they're a lot sicker and they need an emergency room. So that happens. So where are we? So I've been chit-chatting here, talking about travelers, talking about new grads. New grads, remember you're a badass. Be in touch with your badass self. Doesn't mean to be bad. It just means to recognize your strengths, you know, and recognize your weaknesses, and practice for your interviews, and do what you can to keep yourself calm for your interview. And don't rush through an interview. Take your time. If you're being asked about experience, yes, you're a new grad RN. Of course you don't have experience. If you just graduated yesterday and you're into your interview today, you don't have experience under your RN license. But what you do have is all the experience you gained prior to the day you showed up for that interview. Maybe you worked as a CNA. Maybe you worked as a home caregiver. Maybe you worked as an LVN. Maybe you worked as a volunteer LVN. Maybe you worked as a volunteer CNA or an EMT. All of these things are part of who you are, part of who helped you get to your RN, helped you graduate, and gave you experience. So don't forget those things. Bring those things with you. Oh, that's my fax machine. I can't believe anybody even uses it. Please ignore it. All right, so one more plea out there to nurses, to therapists, to techs, everybody traveling, everybody working. I'm very grateful to you. I feel camaraderie with you, but we'd love to hear from you on the Travel Nurse channel. Others would love to hear from you. I can speak to you anytime that works for you, or you can come when we're live. We're live Tuesdays and Thursdays from 2 to 3 p.m. And I think I'm going to go out maybe with say goodbye till next Tuesday. Really looking forward to talking to you all. I have a little vacation coming up. I'm just going to the desert, and I just need to see nature a little bit, and going away in my favorite month, which is October. I love May and I love October. I was born in June. June's okay, but I love May and October since I moved to California. Great, great months, and traditionally when I travel in those months, good times to travel. It's before the summer rush, and October is one of my favorite times. It's autumn, and it can be so beautiful in so many places. Leaves falling and things happening. I don't really know too much about what it's like in the desert, so it'll be interesting to see the desert as well. So anyway, we just started this. It's pretty exciting. It's a little brand of Travel Nurse, kind of a mini commercial. I hope you like it. I came in with it. Let's see if we can go out with it. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let's see if the commercial comes. Take care, everybody. Have a beautiful weekend. I'll be back on Tuesday. Call me or just call in. I'd love to interview recruiters, nurses, therapists, and techs. Everybody's interested in your story. You have great stories. Thank you. Bye-bye. Let's see if this works.
Travel nursing can bring you to places you've never been before. Tell us your story.